Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Javad Hami and these are the headlines. Azerbaijan's envoy to Pakistan, Ali Zada, has hailed Islamabad's support to Baku amid the ongoing clashes with Armenia. At a press conference in Islamabad, he rejected Armenian propaganda that the Pakistan army is fighting alongside Azerbaijani troops. Over 300 people have been killed in almost 2 weeks of fighting over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The Taliban have welcomed President Donald Trump's statement that all U.S. troops will be back home by the end of this year. In a statement, the Taliban said they hope for good relations with all the countries in the future. This comes on the 19th anniversary of American invasion of Afghanistan. U.S. President Donald Trump has refused to take part in a virtual TV debate with his Democratic rival Joe Biden. Earlier, organizers said the next week's debate will take place virtually as the president is diagnosed with COVID-19. In an interview, Trump called the idea ridiculous and said the move is aimed at protecting his rival. Turkey and Greece have agreed to hold talks after weeks of tensions over maritime rights in the eastern Mediterranean. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said Turkey will host the first round of negotiations. He said the two NATO allies are working on finalizing a date for the start of the bilateral talks. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Armenian President Armen Sarkisyan has removed its National Security Service Director Agishti from his post. Sarkisyan has appointed Hamad Zumyan as the acting director of the NSS.
Armenia says 30 more soldiers have been killed in fighting with Azerbaijan over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The Defense Ministry said this has pushed the military death toll to 350 since the war started on September 27. Earlier, France, the United States, and Russia announced to step up efforts to end fighting between Azeri and ethnic Armenian forces. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said representatives from the three countries will meet in Moscow on Monday to seek a ceasefire. Talking to a parliamentary commission, Le Drian said everyone needs to understand that stopping hostilities is in their interest. Armenia says Foreign Minister Zohrab Natsakanyan will also visit Moscow on Monday. However, the Foreign Ministry ruled out Natsakanyan's meeting with Azeri counterpart Ceyhun Bayramov. Meanwhile, Bayramov is meeting international mediators today in Geneva.
Azerbaijan's envoy to Pakistan, Ali Zada, has hailed Islamabad's support to Baku amid the ongoing clashes with Armenia. He was addressing a press conference along with other senior embassy officials in Islamabad. Ali Zada rejected Armenian propaganda that the Pakistan army is fighting alongside Azerbaijani troops. He said Armenia is trying to divert the attention from its aggression and debacle in the battle. While Defense Attaché Colonel Mehman Novruzov said Azerbaijan has recaptured its many areas previously occupied by Armenia.
Azerbaijan army has made good progress, due to the weather conditions and then terrain landscape of that Nagorno-Karabakh area. Azerbaijan army in a short span of time could take, on its control very strategically important areas, as well as 25 villages and one the district center city, the Jabrail city. And while we speak, Azerbaijan army is making progress and advancing towards, to carry out its tasks.
The Taliban have welcomed President Donald Trump's statement that all U.S. troops will be back home by the end of this year. In a statement, the Taliban said they hope for good relations with all the countries, including the U.S., in the future. The group said it is committed to fulfilling its commitments under the peace agreement with the US. Meanwhile, Russia said Trump's move is a pre-election rhetoric to show his voters that he fulfilled his promises. Presidential advisor Zamir Kabulov said the military presence in Afghanistan is not improving the on-ground situation. Earlier, U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said the number of troops will be cut down to 2,500 by early 2021. This comes on the 19th anniversary of American invasion of Afghanistan. In Doha, the Afghan government and the Taliban are engaged in peace talks aimed at ending the war. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has once again lauded the positive role being played by Pakistan in the Afghan peace process. According to military's media wing, Khalilzad met Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi. The two sides discussed the recent developments in the peace process and other matters pertaining to regional security. U.S. Commander General Austin Miller and Pakistan's envoy to Afghanistan, Ambassador Mohammad Sadiq, were also present during the meeting. U.S. President Donald Trump has refused to take part in a virtual TV debate with his Democratic rival Joe Biden. Earlier, organizers said the next week's debate will take place virtually as the president is diagnosed with COVID-19. In an interview, Trump called the idea ridiculous and said the move is aimed at protecting his rival. The president said he is not going to waste his time on a personal debate. However, Biden's campaign said he will participate. Last Thursday, Trump tested positive for COVID-19 2 days after the first presidential debate in Ohio. The next 90-minute presidential event is due to be held in Miami on the 15th of October. In the U.S. vice presidential debate, Republican candidate Mike Pence and Democratic challenger Kamala Harris have clashed over Trump's handling of the coronavirus. More about the debate in this report.
Kamala Harris, who made her own unsuccessful run for the presidency, faced enormous pressure as she took the biggest political stage of her life. Harris went straight after President Donald Trump's record on healthcare, economy to climate change, and foreign policy. She said the Americans have witnessed the greatest failure in the country's history.
They knew what was happening and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it.
Responding, Vice President Pence defended the Republican administration and blamed China for the pandemic.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
Pence also criticized Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who have promised to mandate masks on federal property and encourage the practice nationwide.
We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million.
The debate stood in stark contrast to last week's chaotic presidential debate between President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden. It was the only vice presidential debate of the campaign, with Biden and Trump due for a rematch on 15th and 22nd of October.
Lebanese group Hezbollah says negotiations over maritime borders does not mean making peace with Israel. Lebanon and Israel had agreed to a framework for US-mediated talks earlier this month. The talks were aimed at ending a long-running dispute over the maritime border in the eastern Mediterranean. But the Lebanese parliament Speaker Nabi Berri said this is a framework agreement and not a final one. The heavily armed Hezbollah and Israel last fought a war in 2006. The United Arab Emirates has reiterated its support for a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Minister for International Cooperation Reem bint Ibrahim al-Hashimi said the UAE-Israel deal will benefit the Palestinians. Al-Hashimi met with several Israeli officials to discuss the opportunities for cooperation in the wake of the historic deal. At the meeting, both the sides pledged to reinforce bilateral relations for mutual benefit. They also discussed cooperation in the fight against COVID-19. The Israeli Ministry for Regional Cooperation said it is focused on economic cooperation with countries in the region. Yemen's armed forces say they have captured a key military base from Houthi rebels in the northern province of Jawf. A spokesperson for Yemen's army says Saudi-led Arab coalition supported the operation. The spokesperson said the development is a heavy blow to Houthi rebels' control of northern Yemen. He said coalition carried out precise airstrikes, destroying Houthis' positions. The spokesperson said the raid paved the way for forces to storm the base and kill dozens of rebels in the fighting. Houthis have not yet commented on the claims. Earlier, the coalition destroyed a drone fired by the rebels towards the Saudi Arabia's southern city of Najran. Turkey and Greece have agreed on holding exploratory talks after weeks of tensions on maritime rights in the eastern Mediterranean. Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said both the sides are ready to undertake confidence-building measures. He was speaking after his meeting with a Greek counterpart Nikos Dandias in Slovakian capital Bratislava. They met for the first time since the dispute flared up in recent weeks.
Today I had a 25-minute meeting with Greek Foreign Minister Nikos Dandias on the sidelines of the forum. In these talks, we have agreed on holding exploratory talks and meetings for confidence-building measures in the coming days. As Turkey will host these meetings, we will propose the dates to them.
Greece says Turkey must step back from reopening an abandoned beach resort in northern Cyprus. In a statement, a government spokesman said that Athens and Nicosia will bring the issue before a meeting of the EU leaders. He said the reopening of an area in the abandoned town of Varosha was incongruous with the decision at an EU meeting. Northern Cyprus reopened part of the beach resort that had been abandoned since 1974 conflict on the divided island. Turkey says its military presence in Qatar improves the peace and stability of the Gulf region. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Qatar on an official visit. In an interview, Erdogan said only the troublemakers in the region are disturbed by the Turkish presence in the Gulf. About the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, Erdogan said Armenia attempts to falsely show Turkey is involved in the conflict. The president said it depicts Armenia's confinement and despair. Erdogan said Ankara's presence in Syria seeks to permanently end the crisis. The Turkish president said Ankara doesn't want to occupy Syrian territory. He said Turkey's determination in the Mediterranean has forced the regional players to pay heeds to Ankara's calls for talks. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The global tally of coronavirus cases has surpassed 36 million with over 1 million fatalities. India has registered 971 deaths and over 78,000 new cases overnight. How is the virus wreaking havoc across the globe? Let's take a look at this report.
Coronavirus cases and deaths continue to rise across the globe as nations ramp up struggles to contain the spread. The Americas remain the theater with grimmest COVID-19 pictures. The US continues to lead the world in coronavirus numbers with more than 7.5 million infections and over 211,000 deaths. However, President Donald Trump has called the COVID-19 disease a blessing from God for him.
I view it different. It's a cure. For me, I walked in, I didn't feel good. A short 24 hours later, I was feeling great. I wanted to get out of the hospital. And that's what I want for everybody. I want everybody to be given the same treatment as your president, because I feel great. I feel like perfect. So I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise.
In Latin America, Oxfam's regional director says the COVID-19 has dragged millions of people from the middle classes back to below the poverty line. Over the past 60 days, 11 countries and territories in the Caribbean have moved from moderate to the intense transmission of the virus. Brazil has passed the mark of 5 million confirmed cases. The country approaches the 150,000 deaths in the second most deadly coronavirus outbreak outside the US.
Brazil this week reaches the sad mark of 5 million COVID-19 cases. That number is much greater due to low testing levels and the under-notification of the disease. Very soon we will reach 150,000 deaths, a frightening number. With regards to this, we are seeing the authorities easing social distancing more and more, despite the number of cases.
Meanwhile, in Europe, France has reported over 18,000 new cases, a new high in single-day infections. Italy has imposed new restriction measures as infections in the country rose to 62,000. Czech Republic has also reported more than 5,000 new cases, highest one-day tally since pandemic started.
In Pakistan, the number of COVID-19 active cases have reduced to 8,015. The Health Ministry says out of over 316,000 countrywide cases, more than 302,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said 9 more people have lost their lives to the virus overnight, which raises the death toll to 6,554. It said 583 people tested positive in a day. The ministry said over 139,000 cases have been detected in Sindh province, while over 100,000 have been reported in Punjab so far. The National Command and Operations Centre says 76 COVID-19 patients across the country are on ventilators. Kuwait's new Crown Prince, Sheikh Mishal Al Ahmad Al Sabah, has taken the oath of the office in the parliament. The prince has pledged the Gulf Arab states' commitment to democracy and peace. In televised remarks, Sheikh Mishal said Kuwait will uphold its regional and international commitments. The prince said he will raise the banner of popular participation and promote tolerance to shun division. Earlier, the parliament unanimously endorsed Sheikh Mishal for the role. Kyrgyz security forces have demanded all the political parties sit down for talks and restore the rule of law. In a statement, the National Security Committee said the forces will not be used as a tool by any party. Kyrgyzstan's parliament has so far failed to gather a quorum in an overnight session, leaving a power vacuum in the country. Earlier, Kremlin said it had obligations under an existing security treaty to prevent the situation from totally breaking down. The Central Asian nation has been gripped by instability since parliamentary elections on Sunday. The government critics and opposition parties say the elections were marred by rigging. Police and demonstrators clashed in the Indonesian capital of Jakarta for the third day of protests over a new job law. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered near the presidential palace, shouting and throwing stones. The police responded by firing tear gas in an attempt to disperse the crowd. The government says the new law is necessary to attract investment, but critics view it as a pro-business. In the past 2 days, Indonesian police have arrested nearly 400 demonstrators. The new job creation law is expected to bring radical changes to Indonesia's labor system. The demonstrators say the new law will cripple the labor rights and harm the environment. Mali's military junta has released 12 people, including former Prime Minister, held after the 18th August coup in the country. In a statement, the coup group announced the release of former Defense Minister, civilians and military officers. The National Council for the Salvation of the People is responsible for military coup in Mali, which invited severe backlash from the world. Mali's interim Prime Minister announced the new cabinet 2 days earlier, leading to lifting of some sanctions from the country, but West African leaders have demanded the dissolution of CNSP for the complete removal of sanctions. A former U.S. police officer charged with murdering George Floyd has been released from jail in Minneapolis. A spokesperson for the Minnesota Department of Corrections confirmed he is no longer in their custody. The court records show Derek Chauvin posted $1 million bond for conditional bail. Conditions include prohibitions against working in law enforcement and contact with Floyd's family. Chauvin is also required to surrender any licenses or permits for firearms. The former police officer is charged with second and third degree murder in Floyd's death. In a statement, attorney for Floyd's family said Chauvin's release is a reminder that they are still far from achieving justice. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's party is projected to be one seat short of being able to govern alone. An opinion poll shows the party has a double-digit lead over its rival. Labour Party's leader and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's popularity has taken a 4% hit. Ardern said she is keeping an eye on the polling, but she is pretty happy with the numbers. The opposition National Party has slipped down by 1 percentage point at 32%. Speaking to News opposition leader Judith Collins said she believes it is still anybody's race. The EU Commission has signed a contract with the US drug maker Gilead for the supply of up to 500,000 treatment courses for remdesivir. The Commission says there are 37 signatories to the agreement. It says the signatories include all EU countries, the UK, 6 Balkan candidates, and potential members of the bloc. In a statement, Gilead said a joint procurement agreement will enable rapid and equitable access to remdesivir in Europe. It said the agreement covers purchases of remdesivir over the next 6 months and can be extended. European countries are currently using remdesivir for treating COVID-19 in adults and patients with pneumonia. Gilead said it will begin fulfilling orders from October the 12th. American poet Louise Gleish has won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Literature. The Swedish Academy said her poetry focuses on themes such as death, childhood, and family life. She is the first American woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 27 years. A professor at Yale University, Gleish is seen as one of the most prominent poets in American contemporary literature. Nobel Prizes for medicine, physics, and chemistry were awarded earlier this week. The Peace Prize will be announced tomorrow. Pakistan is remembering the victims of the October 8th earthquake in 2005 that killed over 80,000 people. More than 4 million others were displaced by the 7.6 magnitude earthquake that shook the nation. The earthquake was among the deadliest to ever hit the region. In some places, whole sections of the town slid off cliffs and entire families were killed. The Muzaffarabad in Azad Jammu and Kashmir suffered severe devastation. The town of Balakot in the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province was almost completely destroyed. Damage also was reported in northern India and Afghanistan. Hurricane Delta has re-strengthened into a Category 2 storm in the Gulf of Mexico. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said the storm could become a major hurricane tonight. The center said the hurricane will move over the central Gulf of Mexico later today with the winds of 100 miles per hour. Earlier, the hurricane passed through Mexico's top Caribbean resort, Cancun, causing less than feared damage. Thousands of residents and tourists had already retreated into shelters. Troops cleared roads as fallen trees partially blocked access to Cancun's strip of 5-star hotels. The Miami-based weather forecaster said the hurricane is projected to move inland on the U.S. Gulf Coast by Friday night. Welcome back. Scientists are collecting samples from the melting Arctic region to know more about the underlying ecosystem. More about this research in this report.
As the Arctic melts and reveals swathes of ocean previously impenetrable to scientific investigation, the race is on to document the rich ecosystem lying beneath it. Scientists are using new technologies that can identify the species currently roaming the frigid northern waters. They hope that doing so will help build a case to designate large parts of the ocean as marine protected zones. Researchers are using environmental DNA sampling to detect whether an animal has visited certain waters by the sample it has left behind.
The Arctic is quite rich in biodiversity, and it provides habitat for a whole number of different species, many of which are very specific to those areas. And at the same time, it's actually an area that needs much more research. There's a lot about the Arctic that we don't know, and huge knowledge gaps. So we need to really focus our attention on understanding this ecosystem much better.
Through this research, scientists aspire to reach a reference point for how global warming has affected species distributions as the seas hot up. They believe the Arctic can be completely free of sea ice in the summer within decades. This will make it a highly attractive route for transcontinental shipping from Asia to the US and Europe. Increased shipping brings with it a risk of accidents and oil spills.
Much of the Arctic ecosystem is unprotected, and this is really quite a concern because as the ice recedes and this whole area warms and is changing so rapidly, it means that it's now quite vulnerable to the impact of human activities. And that's why we really need a very strong global ocean treaty to protect these areas.
Currently, there are no environmental protection areas covering the international waters around the North Pole. Environmentalists hope that evidence of a teeming ecosystem in the Arctic will help bolster the case for halting the advance of human activity.
The European Parliament has voted in favour of the EU climate law. The legislation calls for 60% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030. The vote also approved a requirement by the EU to remove as much carbon dioxide as it produces every year. The Parliament also pledged more ambitious goals to be climate neutral by 2050. Lawmakers hope that the cut will put pressure on countries to keep the target above 55%. The European Council, under the presidency of Germany, must also ratify the goal. A World Championship surfer had a close encounter with the shark in New South Wales, Australia. A patrol drone belonging to lifeguards at a sharp beach captured the close call. The footage shows Matt Wilkinson paddling on his board as a shark surfaces behind him, later turning away. In a press release, Wilkinson said he heard a splash while cruising but could not see anything. He added that the drone then came down and told him that there was a dangerous shark in the area. The drone footage is part of a new program for lifeguards designed to monitor sharks and alert beachgoers of any danger. Finding a suitable work to earn a square meal in the war-torn Syria is an uphill task even for men, let alone women. But one woman has broken the barriers of the glass ceiling. Let's have a glimpse of her struggle in this report.
Both men and women gaze at taxi driver Kinana Al-Bunni. When they get into the car, she has been driving through Damascus streets since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. After graduating from a commercial institute, she realized that working indoors did not suit her and decided to work as a taxi driver instead. She first started this career 10 years ago by giving free lifts to friends on their way to the Lebanese capital. When the border closed to curb the spread of the coronavirus pandemic, she started working for a private taxi company in Damascus, a profession usually opted by men.
There is a belief here in this country that women do not know how to drive. So I try to change this idea and show that a woman can drive and sometimes drive better than a man.
The 37-year-old single mother does not only want to provide an income for her 2 children, but also to change attitudes regarding female drivers. When she first sat behind the wheel, her family opposed the idea, saying that society would be against it. But the real support came from her friends.
They opposed the idea a bit. It surprised them. It can't be. How is that possible? In our family, nobody is like this. Our society refuses this. A female driver? Fine, you took a driving course, but to give rights to men, to women, it is not nice. I told them, no, this is what I chose and this is my future. Of course, I am looking for more than this.
Kinana Al-Bunni has proved that strong conviction coupled with hard work cannot stop anyone from pursuing their goals. Now she dreams of owning her own car or taxi company.
A British auction house sells the skeleton of Stan for $31.8 million. Stan is one of the largest known Tyrannosaurus rexes. The pre-sale estimate for Stan was thought to come in around $8 million. Stan is 40 feet long and 13 feet high. He is also notable for two fused vertebrae scientists have identified in his neck. The vertebrae suggest the dinosaur broke his neck and survived during his lifetime. Most T-Rex skeletons are held by museums and private institutions. The auction house, Christie's, says it was an opportunity for a private collector or institution to acquire the bones. The anonymous winning bid was received over the phone. The Universal Pictures has suspended the production of Jurassic World sequel after a few people on the set contracted COVID-19.
In a tweet, director Colin Trevorrow said all tested negative shortly after. But Trevorrow said due to safety protocols, they are suspending the work for 2 weeks.
All right. Yeah, she recognizes somebody up there. Yeah, these people
Filming on the dinosaur adventure movie resumed in England in July under stringent protocols. Trevorrow did not identify who had tested positive on the movie set. Earlier, Universal Pictures said they were pushing back the release date for Jurassic World Dominion by 1 year to June 2022.
Absolutely.
U.S. stocks are trading higher after President Donald Trump has signaled progress in negotiations around a new fiscal stimulus. The Dow Jones Industrial Index is trading higher by about 0.5%. The S&P 500 is trading higher by about 0.2%. And the Nasdaq Composite is trading marginally higher. Meanwhile, oil prices rose as Hurricane Delta approaches the Gulf of Mexico. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.